Start. Hello, I'm Carsten Maass from ECMWF User Outreach and Engagement. Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining our third 4801 webinar. And already I see quite some sort of excitement and expectation in the chat before anything has started. The aim of this presentation is to focus on data-related topics so that every user has sufficient information to hopefully successfully test any 4801 data ahead of implementation, which is planned for the 27th of June. Today's presentation will be shared by three colleagues. Paul Dando from Computing and Software Support. He will start with an overview of the main technical changes and challenges. Then Tiago Quintino, head of the software development, will give some details on the CCSDS data compression introduced with this cycle. And last but not least, Emma Pidduck from data support will talk about accessing and testing data and cover some licensing and commercial matters. The presentation is expected to take about 30 to 40 minutes and will be followed by a question and answer session. So before we start, just a few housekeeping points. The webinar will be recorded and made available on the implementation page afterwards. During the presentation, please keep your microphone muted. We have actually, I think, now done this for all participants. To ask any questions, please feel free to use the chat at any time, or I suggest at the very end, after the third speaker, also feel free to raise your hand and use your microphone. And with that, I will hand over to Paul.
So good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see so many people of you interested in this afternoon's webinar. I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the cycle itself and some of the major changes and the key configuration changes that are happening. I wanted to start, though, however, with a reminder of the timeline that we have for the cycle implementation. As you probably all are aware, we're planning to implement now IFS Cycle 48R1. This is the first update of the IFS forecasting system since we moved to the Atos in October last year, and it's actually the first real scientific update for quite some time. I think we implemented IFS Cycle 47R3 on our Cray system, our old Cray system, in October 2021. Now, it seems to have been quite a long process for us. We started, well, actually well before March this year, but the release candidate phase started on the 14th of March this year. This was the point where we start to produce the test data on a sort of semi-regular basis, more or less in near real time. And we start asking people to start testing, and we give an initial date for when we expect to implement the new cycle in our production. I'd just like to say at this point, I think, to thank everybody who has so far been able to download some of the test data and has made some tests with them, and for all the useful feedback that they have provided. Now, we've already had two webinars on this, as Carsten mentioned. This is the third. We had an initial introductory webinar on the 2nd of March, where Andy Brown, our Director of Forecasts, gave an introduction to some of the scientific changes that go into this cycle. This was followed by a products webinar on the 15th of March, and today we have this data webinar. Wanted to remind you now that the target date for the cycle implementation is getting very close. It's the 27th of June, so it's about 4 weeks away now. We're still updating the web page. The link to it is given there, the URL you can see in the blue there. And if you want to get updates on whenever this page is updated, you can be informed. You can actually watch the page by clicking on the watch button. It actually says watch rather than watching. If you're watching it, it says watching. If you need to watch, you can click on watch, and you'll get a reminder, or you'll be informed whenever the page is updated. I've also included in here, for any of you that missed the two previous webinars, there are QR codes there, which I'll give you links to the YouTube videos of the 2 webinars that were held previously. Next page then, please, Emma. So here we want to talk about the key configuration changes that we're introducing with the Cycle 48R1. Biggest thing for me is the change to the horizontal resolution of the ensemble forecast, where we're going to increase this from the current 18-kilometer resolution to a 9-kilometer resolution. The other thing that's a major change is the upgrade to the extended ensemble configuration. And here we will start running this as a standalone forecast, and it will run every day. So at the moment, as you probably all know, in 47R3, the extended forecast, ensemble forecast, is actually run as an extension of the current ensemble forecast. So twice per week on Mondays and Thursdays, from day 15 onwards out to day 46, we run an extension to the ensemble forecast with the 50+1 members and at a lower resolution, at roughly 36-kilometer resolution rather than the current 18-kilometer resolution. With the introduction of 48R1, we will actually start running the extended configuration as a standalone, but at the lower resolution from day 0. So it'll run at 36-kilometer resolution from day 0, and this will be run every day from the 0 UTC initialization time. It will also consist of 100 perturbed members plus the control forecast, rather than the 50 perturbed members plus the control forecast that we have at the moment. And because of this, we're actually going to be able to discontinue some streams. So, for example, because of this resolution change we currently have, we have what the so-called overlap streams, which allow people to handle accumulated parameters across the resolution change. Because we will no longer have a resolution change in the extended forecast, we will not need these two overlaps or these overlap streams anymore, so we will discontinue them. Other streams will be repurposed, but there will also be some new streams. So the new ENS extended forecast will now be stored in Maass and available in dissemination under the stream EEFO, whereas the medium range forecast, our standard 15-day forecast, which will be now at the 9-kilometer resolution, which is of course the same resolution as our high resolution forecast at the moment, that will continue to use stream ENFO, and similarly for the wave and the hindcast, we're making change of those two. Now we currently have only the one hindcast set because we have just one ensemble forecast, if you like, but from 48R1 we'll have 2 different hindcast sets. One for the medium range, so this will be at the 9-kilometer resolution, and one for the extended range at the 36-kilometer resolution. And these will be produced twice a week on Monday and Thursday as they are now. We also will be introducing this new CCSDS packing type for gridded Group 2 data only. This will allow us to further compress the files, so files will be smaller, not just for you receiving them, but also for us to store them in the archive. And Tiago will be telling you more about this later. Next slide, please. There's also been a refresh of our climate fields, and some of you have already noticed that there are changes to things like the orography and the land sea mask. We've also made changes to the lake cover and depth and the glacier mask. And these new climate fields are now based on a more up-to-date, higher resolution and with more accurate information. So for your applications now, it's essential that you use the new 48R1 climate fields together with any other model parameters. If you've downloaded previously, say the orography field, and you're thinking, well, this is an invariant field and it's not changing, then you will, of course, now need to re-download that for 48R1. And we've recognized also that we were not providing the climate fields for the open data. So this is the data which is made freely available from download from our various FTP servers, etc. So we have added some of the climate fields to the test open data set, and these will also become available as a standard in our ECMWF open data from 48R1 onwards. Next slide, please. And as a final piece from me, there has been a change to the way the configuration of the Ensemble Extended Forecast weekly products. So what's going to happen with these is there will be a daily update for the upcoming Monday to Sunday week of the weekly products, such as the weekly means from the extended forecast. And this will happen each day, and except for on Monday, where you will get the data for the current week. So let's take an example. On Tuesday, we will run the extended forecast out to the 46 days, and we will provide a weekly mean which will be for the week starting the following Monday. On Wednesday, we will run again, and we will produce an update for the weekly mean starting again on the following Monday, and so on until we get to the Monday of the following week, when, if you like, we will produce one final weekly mean that's valid for that particular week. And then on Tuesday, we start again, but then with the next week. Now, obviously, that's going to create some interest regarding the way you actually request this data, both in dissemination and from Maass, because now you'll be having to change your step range each day, depending on which day of the week the data was produced. So what I suggest to everybody is that you look at the documentation that we have on the webpage. I've put the link is in the box there, which explains which step ranges are available for which days of the week the run started on. We're also going to be computing the weekly products for every run of the extended range forecast, and these are going to be valid then for the various calendar weeks going forward for 5 or 6 weeks, depending on which day of the week it is, from 0 UTC on a Monday to 0 UTC on the following Monday. And I think that's all from me. So at this point, I will hand you over to Tiago, who will tell us about the compression information.
Okay, hi. So we are introducing something a bit different this cycle. Next slide, please. We are introducing a little difference on how we pack the data that we send. Again, let's basically first understand what it means by packing the data. Normally, when we encode the data to send as grid fields, we take the array of values of doubles, we pass it through something called the encoding process inside our encoder, and this packs the data into a stream of bytes that is stored inside. And then we do the reverse when we want to unpack the data, or when you unpack the data when you receive our data. And next slide, please. Inside that algorithm, there is a mechanism that's called quantization. So we take the 64-bit data and we bring it down to either 16 or 24 bits, depends on which parameter we're talking about. And that is how we encode that into bytes. This quantization is called the grid simple packing process inside the WMO standard. And then there is a reverse of that when we decode. What's going to be new, next slide, please, is that we are going to, in the process of using another of the WMO standards, this time called CCSDS, the grid CCSDS, after doing the same process of quantization, we do an extra step where we compress, without any loss of information, that stream even more. So the first step of quantization is lossy, the second step is not, and it has exactly the same information content. And then on the reverse process, when decoding, there is first a decompression from that byte stream, then a dequantization, and then we return the values in doubles in 64-bit. And that is guaranteed to be equal to the same as it was as if it would have been sent via the grid simple packing. So there is absolutely no loss of information in this process. Next. So what's important to understand that this is completely internal to the way that grid works and the way in the software that we provide EC codes. So if you're using EC codes, you should see absolutely no differences. Next, it's also important to again state that this has because it's lossless, there is no scientific impact. The numbers are exactly the same. So it's compression, but because it's based on the concept of entropy, and it looks at the numbers, that's the scientific content of the numbers, is guaranteed to be the same. So why do we doing this? Well, we did a bit of an analysis. There's a technical memo with all the details if you would like to read it. But in essence, as the resolution of the ensemble was increasing in this model update, we were going to increase a lot the volumes that we produce. And by adopting this process, we are able to save 35% of volume of the data. But this 35%, these are savings that propagate across the whole infrastructure and the things that we need to do. It also means that to transfer data is faster, means that to store it is also more resource optimized. What's also important is that this only applies to GRIB2 data, and therefore the savings are limited to the fields that we have in GRIB2. Over the years that come into the future, we will be moving more and more fields to use GRIB2, and that means we will be able to profit from this into the future. Next slide. So to handle this data, you actually remains very, very simple. If you are using EC codes, to get to the values, that doesn't change at all. You still have, say, in the command line, same command, or in Python is the same, or whatever your preferred language is the same function. You do not need to change your code if you need just to get to the data and if you are using EC codes. Next one. If you want to say, if you're receiving the data that is in the data stream that is compressed using this CCSDS, and say your downstream tools only support grid simple packing, using EC codes, you can, in a single command, transform that data back to simple packing. And in a programming language like Python, is again 2 lines of code. You can transform that to simple packing. If you want to do the reverse, for example, if you have a simple packed data, you can also transform it to grid CCSDS with a single command line or 2 lines of code. And you should also see those advantages of compression. Again, I remind you, this is only applicable for GRIB2 data, not for GRIB1 and gridded data. So can we go to the next slide? Right. What are the benefits? Well, first, of course, quite obvious, reduced data volume. That impacts the model output, the data archive, even the dissemination streams we are sending to. It really helped offset the increase of resolution in this ensemble. So it was important that we did this at this moment. As I said, the compression is lossless. There's no impact to the data, and the values are exactly the same. But more important also to understand is that the compression that we are adopting now is scalable, which means it's a good investment for the future. And that is the plot that you have here. You have in the vertical axis a list of different sort of parameters that we produce. And the horizontal axis, you have different grids. And right now, our ensemble is right at the middle, is a 01280, the 48R1 ensemble. And as we will increase resolution over the coming years, you can see if you follow one particular line of this table, the benefit keeps increasing. So say if you take LSP and large-scale precipitation, and if you scale it all the way to the 1.25 kilometers that hopefully one day we'll be able to do, at that scale, the compression benefit is 12 times more than if we would stay with the current packed scheme. And this really shows that if we want to be prepared for the future, we need to start changing some things now. Okay, next slide. So key points is that this compression only applies to gridded fields. So there is no change for spectral harmonics. Those remain encoded in spectral form. Wave spectra also is not changing, so it stays as it is. And any GRIB1 field, no matter if it's gridded or spectral, it stays unchanged. We are also changing that CCSTS compression becomes our default way of packing. You can always disable it and enforce packing with the simple packing by passing packing equals simple in the requests of the dissemination. But just for you to understand, we have here a very summarized table that if you do any interpolation with the grid equals parameter, we always try to we always inherit the packing that comes from the input. So if it's GRIB1, it stays GRIB simple. If it's GRID2, it will stay compressed with CCSTS. What happens for spherical harmonics? If it's spherical harmonics coming from GRIB1 spectral fields, it will be encoded to simple. But if it's GRIB2 spectral fields, once we interpolate, it will be encoded with CCSTS. And finally, would like to maybe point out that this CCSTS has been a standard of WMO for a long time already. We just were not using it, but it has been there. And it has been actually supported in our software for many years. It's just we were not using them in operations. If you use EC codes, things become a bit easier because it will all work transparently. You still need to ensure that your EC codes is built with AEC library, which is the library that brings in this encoding. And there is a minimal version of EC codes that goes back already a few years. 2.15 is what you need that supports this compression. But we do recommend that you use 230 and above so that you can also profit from the new and recognize the new parameters that come with this cycle. I think that's all for me.
Okay, thank you, Tiago, and hopefully that's clarified some of the points regarding the CCSTS compression. So I'm going to talk to you about a few different topics with regard to accessing and testing the data in what we call the E-suite, the experimental test data. And it's been mentioned a few times by Paul at the beginning, but as a recap, there are some changes to the data configuration. The 15-day forecast, the ENS forecast, remains under the streams ENFO and WAEF, W-A-E-F. So this will still be the 15-day ensemble forecast. However, with the separation of the two forecasts, the ENS extended data, the 46-day forecast, will now be under stream equals EFO or WEEF, so EEFO or WEEF. As Paul mentioned, we now have two sets of hindcasts, one for the 15-day forecast and one for the 46-day forecast. And these 15-day forecast hindcasts are in stream ENFH, ENWH for the WAVE hindcast, EFHS for the hindcast statistics, and WEHS for the WAVE hindcast statistics. So that's consistent with the current streams now, but will be capped at 15 days. The ENS extended 46-day hindcast is under some new streams, and these streams are shown EEFH, WEEH, EEHS, and WEES. These streams are available in Maass, and you can also use these streams in the dissemination language. The hindcast for both the ENS extended and the ENS, so for the 15 and 46-day forecast, will be twice per week on Mondays and Thursdays. But the weekly products for the 46-day forecast will be produced daily. So this is, as Paul has mentioned. Paul also mentioned that the overlap step produced in stream equals EFOV, EFOV, or the equivalent wave and hindcast fields will no longer be required because you don't need to jump from one resolution to another in the ENS extended anymore. So we have removed this from all real-time data requirements, but you will need to adapt your workflows on your side to handle this where this data disappears. So this is just a summary, and I wanted to highlight this page. These are the streams for the extended range forecasts, which I've just mentioned. But this link at the bottom is important because you can see the other stream names that relate to other forecasts that we produce, including the high res, the ensemble, and the seasonal. So for more, please have a look at this link, and it will help you understand the structure of our data in terms of streams. So to mention, the ECMWF open data is produced in GRIB2 format, and it will be provided with the CCSDS packing from the 27th of June and onwards. So at the moment, it has packing, simple packing, but we are producing a test data set for ECMWF open data. I've provided the link here, and we encourage you to have a look. It also has the climate fields that Paul mentioned. So you should also be able to get a copy of the Land-Sea mask if you haven't got this already. If you see any issues or you have any questions, please raise a ticket via the support portal. We really value your feedback, and it really helps us to make sure we're doing the right thing. But also to highlight for anyone using the WMO datasets, the essential or additional datasets, we will keep these with packing, simple packing, so they will not use CCSDS. So if you're using the Maass archived access data, the test data is stored in a separate experiment version. In this case, this is experiment version 78, and it is available for all streams as we run the whole model together. From the 27th of June, 78 will stop having experiment version 78 will no longer have new data added. Everything will be under experiment version 0001, as is the normal case. So the experiment version is a short period. It has a short lifetime. It only goes back to February 2023 when we started the release candidate phase, and it will stop once the cycle goes live. Just remember, if you're testing with your scripts, to then update this to 0001 to go back to the operational at the end of June. So the access methods for real-time data, and this will apply to some of the member state users who have access to this particular piece of software, and also some of the commercially licensed users who may have access, so the silver and the gold users. This is a test version of our product requirements editor, or TPRED. You can see it's red, and this is so that you can tell the difference, but it actually has a slightly different feature called ready to migrate. And I'll go through this in a minute, but this is quite an important feature for anyone who has access, because we'd like you to use this feature as much as possible so that we know where you're at with your data testing. So as I mentioned, it has a red banner, and we're asking all users who have access to configure any changes related to 48R1 that they would like. So this might be upgrading to the 9-kilometer resolution for the ensemble, or adding 100 members for ENS extended. And once you have configured it and tested it and you're happy, you can then click the Ready to Migrate button. This means we will then know that you're fine and happy. What will happen on the day of the cycle upgrade is that all requirements in the test system, will become operational. We've now decided that any streams that haven't been marked as ready to migrate, they will still be used in production, but we may have to make some assumptions regarding the content so that it doesn't break on our side. So these assumptions might include changing ENFO to EFO where we think it's relevant. Obviously, if you still want to keep ENFO, you may need to make some changes, such as to the grid or to stop the time steps at 360. But we've made a certain number of assumptions in order to make sure this data produces without failure. We will also apply packing equals simple to any that are not ready to migrate. However, we will be reminding those users who have not tested that they really should consider testing and the implications of CCSDS and the cycle if they don't. So I strongly encourage, and I can't say it enough, please contact us to test data. We're happy to help you out and to configure things or to talk you through it, but we really need your help with this. The other key points that are quite important, changes made in the production system in the meantime, so between the release candidate phase and the 27th of June, must also be made in the test system. Given the complexity of the upgrade, we will not have the easy ability to synchronize the production and the test requirements at the point of changing over. So we ask you, please update changes in both systems to make sure that your workflows still work on the day. As per usual, before we upgrade the cycle, we will close the test and the operational product requirements editor. So member states, commercial licenses, all users will be frozen out from the 21st of June at close of business. So you need to make all production changes and all test changes before this date. The cycle will then go live on the 27th, and on the 28th, all being well, we will reopen the requirements for users to make changes. And obviously at that point, you will only have the operational product requirement editor. So again, to repeat, please test as much as you can. Configuring the extended range forecast. As I've mentioned, we have some daily fields, we have some weekly products that will be daily. We've decided to honor the use equals Monday, Thursday configuration. So for users who don't wish to take the daily ENS extended, so if you don't want a 46-day forecast every day, you can still use use equals Monday, Thursday, and you will get data twice per week. You can also choose whether you will take 50 or 100 members, and either option, 50 or 100, will still give a representative distribution of the forecasts. This is if you wish to preserve the volumes or not take too much data, you can still specify 50. If you wish to take 100, you need to update this in the test system. As I mentioned, we also had to make some assumptions when we launched the test spread. This was to ensure that the data would produce. So we've now said that the info stream, if we saw in your requirements that it went beyond step 360, we changed it to EFO. And so on for the wave and the hindcast, and we may have adjusted the grid if this was necessary. Any info streams at grid equals 0.2 or equivalent and use equals Monday were moved to grid equals 0.4. And this is to make sure that the ENS extended data under EFO is produced at 36 kilometers. So there have been changes to your requirements on your behalf. And again, make sure you check these out and test the data that you're getting. And you can access the test data. So again, this applies to member states and also to gold and silver commercially licensed users. You can either log in with your TOTP token or your little 8-digit number and your username to the test ECPDS system. So again, another red band so that you know it's the test system, and you should be able to see your destination and all the test files. If you would like any of these files to be delivered automatically for a couple of days or for until the system goes live, you can ask for us to put those, you can ask for us to schedule that. But note that the files on the test system may not be delivered according to the schedule. They may not be produced, and there may be issues at certain times, as I'm sure some of you have seen. So just keep an eye on that and let us know if we can help or if you spot anything strange. I'll hand back over to Paul now, who will talk through a specific application for the member and cooperating states.
Thanks, Emma. So yes, we're changing tack a little bit here now because I'm going to give some information which is specific for member and cooperating state users who actually have login access to computing systems. Those of you that do are probably familiar that we have this time-critical framework for member state time-critical applications. And we'll possibly even be running jobs under this. So users who are running the jobs under the option 1 of the time critical framework, this is sometimes referred to as simple time critical jobs, they need to test their jobs if they possibly can using one of these EC access events that have been defined and have been around actually for some time, which are linked to the availability of the IFS 48R1 test data. So these are these events which start E_, E being for the experiment, or which refers to the E suite, the test data, We've just got these four, so it's fairly coarse-grained. It's not as fine-grained as the events that we have generally defined, but we have something which actually covers basically the basic availability of the data. And you can submit your jobs to these events, and the jobs will be triggered to run whenever the test data becomes available. Now, for each of these, the environment variable MSJ_exver will be set to 0078. So this is the experiment version of the current E-suite, the experimental suite, which is running as the release candidate. So if you use, for example, exver equals $MSJ exver in your Maass retrievals, then that should allow you to download the IFS Cycle 48R1 test data from Maass. A few of you may be running also applications under options 2 or even option 3 of the framework for time-critical applications. These applications should be tested with the IFS 48R1 test data as well, either retrieved from Maass or obtained from the test dissemination system that Emma has just referred to. Again, if you need the data downloaded from the test ECPDS, let us know and we can arrange that for you. It's particularly important for any of you who are running, say, a limited area model, which is using ECMWF model level data, for example, as the initial or lateral boundary conditions. This is because this data will, by default, be packed as CCSDS. So you do really need to test that your processing can handle this new format data correctly. And if not, let us know and it can be changed so that you get the simple packed data. Next page, please. We also have some changes that have been made in light of the changes to the ensemble and the ensemble extended forecasts. So because we are changing particularly the extended ensemble forecast, the old pre-cycle 48 MOFC EC access events, and there were probably 7 or 8 of these are going to be discontinued. And they have been replaced instead by 2 new events. One, EXT00H1140, will be triggered daily whenever the ensemble forecast is ready to be delivered. So this will be at 20 UTC each day. The other event will be EXT00H1104 ref, the ref here referring to the reforecasts, which will be triggered on Monday and Thursday whenever the hindcast data for the extended ensemble forecast is available. And also because the ensemble forecasting system itself has its own set of reforecasts, there's a new event defined for this. This is EF00H360 ref again, referring to reforecasts. We've put together a Confluence page in our documentation, which gives further details about all this. I've included the link in the slide here. But the main points here to take home are that we are not going to migrate any user jobs that are subscribed to the MFOC events. The users will have to do this for themselves. They'll have to take their existing jobs and adapt them with the new streams and submit them to one of the new events. You can use these events, the new events, these EXT and new EF events now, even with the release candidate data. They are being triggered from the release candidate, so they run whenever the Cycle 48R1 test data is available. If you use these MSJ_environment variables in your time-critical jobs, and in particular the $MSJ_exver, then the jobs will work seamlessly both before and after the IFS 48R1 implementation. Because once we implement for IFS 48R1, MSJ_exver will be set to 001 and it will become the operational version. So your jobs will just continue working seamlessly. Okay, next page, please, Emma. And finally, a word from me on the ensemble meteograms, wavegrams, and the plumes. These are one of our very popular applications, particularly for users actually running the time-critical jobs. We have a number of users who have simple time-critical jobs subscribed to the events for the availability of the metgrams. But even though I mentioned it in terms of the time-critical jobs, the comments I'm going to make now also apply to any of the meteograms that are accessed from the web charts, and also to an extent to the time series that are produced in buffer, which are available in dissemination. Now, the issue here is that the meteograms use data from the model grid point nearest in distance to the coordinates of the station location input by the user. And because of the increase of the horizontal resolution of the ensemble, the underlying model grid changes, and therefore the nearest grid point will also be different. Now, the good news is that, of course, the grid point is in all probability going to be closer to your station location that you have entered as the input. But it could also mean that you are going to be impacted, particularly close to coasts or close to areas where there's steep orography, if the nature of the grid point has changed. So you can imagine close to a coast, at the moment, your nearest grid point could be a land point. But once we change the resolution and you've got a higher resolution grid, the nearest grid point may actually be a sea point. So you could end up with a very different looking meteogram product. Similarly, close to areas of steep orography, you can imagine this situation where your nearest grid point is in the valley, and with the new resolution and the new higher resolution grid, you end up with the nearest grid point, which is halfway up a mountain. So again, you can get very different looking meteograms. So really, users are going to need to review and, if necessary, update the coordinates they use for their station locations for these meteograms type products. And at that point, I think I hand back to Emma for the remainder of the...
Me again, with some very brief updates on the licensing and any commercial matters related to the cycle upgrade. The first thing to highlight, which I've already mentioned, is users who have access to the test PRED, please log in and make your changes. And as per the normal system, you will need to request publication or if you would like automatic delivery. So if you have access, please do so, please check, and then let us know if any issues. For any licensed users who don't have access to the test PRED, basic or bronze users, perhaps research, satellite data providers, and other categories, please raise a ticket in the ECMWF support portal with your request or what you'd like changed, and we'll help you, and we'll send you the data that you need to test. So if you do choose to make changes because of the new cycle upgrade, for instance, taking the ENS 9-kilometer resolution or the 100 members or the daily ENS extended, these will impact your volumes. And it could be an awful lot more if you don't use the CCSDS compression. So it would be good to keep that if you can. And it may mean that some users exceed the current volume limit or get very close to the limit of 1.5 terabytes per day. So if you reach this ceiling and you still need more data, a second license will be required. However, we will waive the information cost for the second license. So in effect, you will only pay for the volume and service charge of any extra data in the second license. In order to look at the impact of the new data on your costs, we will release a new product requirements catalog, or so-called shopping cart. And this should go out next week in early June, or later this week or next week. And you'll be able to see the cost for 48R1. At the same time, we will also show in the test product requirements catalog the impact of the change that we're making to our fees from the 1st of July. So all commercial users should have been told that from the 1st of July, the maximum charge that we will charge has been reduced from 100,000 euros per year to 70,000 euros per year. And this applies to new and renewing contracts. If you are partway through your contract and you want to take advantage of the new costs, please contact us and you will have to terminate your license with 3 months notice to take effect of the new rates. In the meantime, we will continue to amend your licenses for the 48R1 adjustments. So if you wish to take advantage of the cycle upgrade from the 27th of June, you should already be testing your data and implementing that in the test system by the 21st of June. If you do not meet this date, we won't be able to do any updates until the system is unfrozen on the 28th of June. You'll need to have your license amended for these aspects and also any new parameters that you might add. And we will do the date of the amendment from the 1st of July. As I said, if you wish to terminate for the new pricing scheme and do an amendment for 48R1, please just let us know and we'll handle the amendments first, and then we will handle the termination once the amendments are complete. And this is quite an important order. Once you have terminated, you cannot amend your data until the new license starts. We don't have this capability in the licensing. If you just let us know the date of your 3-month notification, we'll record it in the system, and then closer to the time, we'll give you the new license with the new fees. So the final thing to highlight is a checklist for all users. So this goes back to all users, member state, research, satellite data provider, commercial, and everybody using our data. Please have a look at the 48R1 implementation page and watch it so that you see the updates. Make sure that you can handle the GRIB2 data with CC/SDS packing. And if you can't, please request for us to install this as packing equals simple in real-time dissemination. If you use EC codes 2.30.2, this should be transparent to you. Please check that your processing chains work correctly with the test data. You may need to change things for the EFOV step that we've removed, or perhaps you need to adapt your resources, and note that the runtimes may change. For data from Maass and dissemination, please be aware that the default behavior for GRIB2 gridded fields is now CC/SDS, and you will need to override this if your workflows can't handle this compression. If you use extended range ensemble products, please pay attention to the configuration change. We have made the changes based on assumptions, so please check that our assumptions are correct. You need to address the discontinuation of the EFOV, EFHO, WEOV, and EWHO streams. And if you are recipients of real-time data, please let us know your intentions and click the Ready to Migrate. This will be a great help for us. And if you have any feedback, issues, or questions, please raise a ticket on the support portal and one of us will get back to you as soon as we can. And now we will open the floor for questions. Thank you for your time and thank you for those who have tested. I can't see my Teams because I'm sharing, so I will stop sharing temporarily.
Yeah, there have been quite a few questions in the chat, and we are still dealing with many of those. Maybe if something pressing hasn't been.
I can see Isla has her hand up.
Hi, yeah, so you can tell me that this is going to be addressed in UEF next week if you want to. When we compare the ensemble mean versus the control run in the 15-day forecast, then you would, at 0-hour lead time, you wouldn't expect to see any structure, or at least I wouldn't, because the perturbations are random. Should we expect the same in the EFO, the 45-day?
I think
there's no structure.
Tim, if Tim or Ivan or one of the evaluation team are available. Tim, thank you.
Hi, yeah, I am available. I'm trying to do several things, but yeah, let's deal with this. So you're talking about T+0, Isla, is that right?
Correct. So should we expect ensemble mean minus control to have any structure? Because in the 15-day forecast, it doesn't. And we're just seeing a few odd things in the test data, including the fact that it does actually have some structure in the EFO, but not the MFO. I mean, if you wouldn't expect it, then I suggest we take this offline and have a dig further, and we'll have a look at a few more cases as they become available. But if you are expecting some structure, then I need to refine my understanding of the perturbations in the EFO.
Well, I'm not certain of the answer, but I think that the analyses are created on the basis of the higher resolution grid, and so in transposing those onto the low resolution grid, there may be some quirky behavior. But I would need to speak to someone like Martin Neutbecker to find out about that. Maybe so. Probably next week, when you're coming, I think aren't you, is the best time to take that up rather than. Is that sufficiently soon?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just aware that if there are any quirks, then we're getting.
Yes, thanks for putting it. I will try and mention it to him in the meantime, and then we'll come back to you next week in person.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
And thank you for the seminar.
You're welcome. Somebody else had their hand up, and now I can't see who. Does anyone know? Because there's Xavier Calbe.
Yes, this, you didn't speak about this. There was an email saying that the grid keyword in the Maass request will be modified. Do you know anything about this, or?
The grid.
I saw your question. I'm not aware of your email, of the email that you refer to.
Of your email, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I maybe misread it. Okay, thank you. So there's no change in the grid Maass keyword.
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay.
You still specify as your latitude, longitude, resolution, or using one of the other known keywords, the recognized keywords.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay, I must have misread it. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Dr. Lowell from ACMAD.
Of the regional climate center designated by the WMO, and massively we use your data in operational activities. But unfortunately, the current data that we are allowed access to is seriously insufficient for our operational activities. And it seems that the WMO is making some efforts to liaise with ECMWF over it, but it's like it's taking forever. So we are happy that this meeting is happening here. So I'm trying to ask if there is any arrangement in the nearest future to give us more liberty data-wise. Thank you very much.
Okay, good question. I can start by saying that, as you may know, we are progressively moving more towards open data. So in 2024, early 2024, we will release more data openly and at a higher resolution. If all goes to plan, we will release more data at 0.25 degree resolution. So this should help with the data availability. And in general, we are trying to work with countries to make data more accessible to them. And I see Umberto has turned his camera on. Do you want to add anything?
No, I think you mentioned the fundamental. We are also having some separate discussion in general with in some cases involving ACMAD, but I would say that this is not the right forum to have this discussion more in detail.
Please feel free to send us an email or raise a ticket in the support portal, and we can continue this discussion further and let you know where we're at with that. Okay, so I think next we have Nick. Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, we've noticed that some of the trial data that's been disseminated to us has come across with gaps or holes, particularly the hindcasts. EPS, the new EPS and extended hindcast has been, some of the dates have been missing significant numbers of steps. So we're wondering if it's possible to have these data repaired and redisseminated to us so that we can actually test ingestion of these data through our systems.
Well, we wouldn't regenerate that in the ECPDS system, but you would be able to get this data from Maass. So under the EXPER, you should be able to get the data without the holes, but we can't regenerate going backwards in ECPDS so easily, especially with the timeline and the amount of data to do. So I'd recommend looking in Maass to see if everything you need is there and if that will help fill the holes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Gerald Fleming.
No, don't question.
No question?
No question.
Okay. And then Aijun Deng.
Yeah, I have a question regarding the GRIB 2 data. We are not using the EC codes, but we're using PY GRIB. Per new version, but is this going to work smoothly, or do we need to look for a new package to replace this?
I don't know if PyGrib will work. Maybe Tiago has a comment on that. To my knowledge, we're not sure.
I think we need to double check that, but
yeah,
I'm not sure.
In a nutshell, PyGrib uses EC codes in the big background, so it should work with that.
So yeah.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Well, I mean, I think maybe just to add, sorry, I think it really depends on which version of EC codes your PyGrib has been built.
Yeah, of course.
Does that answer your question, Aijun?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay. Lajos, did you have another question to follow up?
Yeah. If I understand well, then we are subscriber for 15 days ENS data as well. And by default, from this 27 changes, we will get 9 kilometer resolution data under the same file names. Is that correct? But that also means that the data volume will be 4 times bigger, covering the same area. And I would be curious, the readiness of the last files, will that be some different time schedule when we can start to process the full forecasts? Thank you.
Okay, starting from the beginning of that, if you have requested the 9 kilometer ENS, then that is what you'll receive. If you haven't already requested it, you will continue to receive the 18 kilometer ENS. So first of all, just let us know via a ticket if that's what you want. The second question is that it will be 4 times larger if you don't use the CCSDS compression. If you have CCSDS compression, it won't be 4 times bigger. But at the moment, we don't foresee any changes to the dissemination schedule. So you should still receive everything in your file at the same time. Obviously, this depends on internet transfer speeds, but this shouldn't be an issue.
Maybe just to add, of course, I mean, this is the time when we will start disseminating the data to you. So if you then have selected to get the 9 kilometer, as these will be bigger files, typically it will take longer to arrive to you. So you would expect that the time when you can start processing the data yourself probably will be a bit later.
Okay, I think we have Louis Jérôme.
Yes, hello everyone. I am Jérôme Louis from Telespazio France. I'm working for the Copernicus Sentinel-2 mission, who's using some ECMWF and CAMS data provided inside the Sentinel-2 product. I think the first question I have is quite answered. We are currently using GRIB 1 data. So if I understood well, there is no change of GRIB 1 format, and there is no parameter that are today in GRIB 1 format that are discontinued.
That's correct.
And this may happen in 2026, if I understood correctly. There is a plan of migration, but that will appear later in time.
Exactly. There's a newsletter article and there will be a mailing list that you can follow to hear more updates about this process, but it will be later on. 2026 is the aim.
Okay, thank you very much. And the second question I had, we are relying also on the ECMWF aux FTP to download some CAMS forecast, the CAMS near real time, where the data is provided as GRIB and also NetCDF. I was wondering if the GRIB data will change resolution or will stay to the current resolution they have.
To my knowledge, there are no changes to the CAMS resolution.
Okay, so
it'll stay as it is.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
No problem.
That's all for me.
Okay, good questions. Are there any more? Would anybody else like to ask anything? So for those who haven't seen the chat, one of the questions asked is which run will be the first one to go live on the 27th of June, and it will be the 06 UTC cycle. So the 06 UTC cycle on 27 June will use 48R1. Next question. And somebody said, does that mean the 00 will not be available? No, we will still run the 00, but it will be 47R3 for the 00, and then the 06 will be 48R1. So you'll still get all the data for the day. It'll just be one cycle, then the next, and so on. Okay, well, I think now we've run past our allotted time. So thank you all for attending. Huge thanks to Paul, Carsten, Tiago, Umberto, Tim, anybody who answered questions. And if you have any more, please raise them via the support portal and we will help.
Yeah, and
have a good day.
Watch the page, and then you will be informed about the upload of the recording, for example.